Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. Excited for today's guest. She's the founder and executive director of the Association of Ghostwriters and as well the president of her own business book ghostwriting firm. So I'm excited to be rocking out today with Marcia Layton Turner. Hey, Marcia, you ready to rock?
Let's rock.
Awesome. So we always start off here in a good note. Tell me a story of success that we can be inspired by.
Well, I think I have two to share. One from early days. Um, so growing up, going through high school and into college, I never really thought of myself as a writer. Could never have conceived that I would eventually become a writer. Uh, my dad was a fine artist, so when other future novelists were writing stories and stuff, I was painting pictures. I was making the illustrations for those books. And went to a demanding high school, so I was definitely like just a little bit above average.
Mhm.
But then I went away to college, and at my college, you had the option to either take an exam at the end of the semester or write a paper.
Hmm.
I like to be in control of how much time I spend on things, and so I always took the paper option. So over the course of I graduated early, so 3.5 years of writing papers for lots of classes. I sort of figured it out, but I didn't really know that until I went out to the University of Michigan to get my MBA, and we're writing papers and they're easy and I'm getting A's. And I distinctly remember thinking, wow, I figured it out. I got it. Okay, this is good. And so I went on to actually join the marketing communications department at Kodak,
Hmm.
rose quickly through the ranks, became director of one of their B2B divisions, then left to run my own marketing company. And that eventually evolved into what I do now, which is business book ghostwriting and running the Association of Ghostwriters. But I think the lesson that I really want your listeners to hear is that you can learn new skills in adulthood. Just because you didn't learn it when you were in elementary school or middle school or even high school, you can still learn and get better and obtain new skills maybe that you never thought you could have, because I really never would have thought that I would become a writer. But through the years, I've really worked at it. And so I encourage people, if there's something that you've always like wished you could do, you can do it. You just need to spend some time working on those skills. I took online classes and read lots of books and went to conferences and things like that.
Yeah.
So it is possible, and it's the skill now that my business is based on.
Wow.
So that's the first one. But then the second story, which I think is really relevant for everybody, and I keep threatening to write a book about it, is the power of asking questions. And I think this is so important for newer home-based business owners, is not to be afraid to ask questions. Um, and the best story that I can think of to illustrate this is back when I was starting my home-based business and I was doing marketing. I was primarily serving startup entrepreneurs. So I was helping them with marketing plans and business plans and really just understanding how to get started. And I had heard, or I think I saw an ad in Entrepreneur Magazine for this series of conferences that they were running nationwide. I remember there was San Francisco, LA, Miami, and New York, major ones. And I thought, wow, that looks like a really good conference. But when you're in startup mode, you don't have a lot of money. And so
Hmm.
I really wanted to be sure this was going to be worth my time. But there wasn't an agenda. It was just come to this all-day event, or actually it was 3 days. So I emailed the organizer and said, hey, do you have an agenda for this? Can you tell me what the sessions are, who's speaking? And she said, oh, we're still working on that. I said, oh, well, what's the process to be considered as a speaker? And she said, well, what do you want to talk about? And I thought, oh, this isn't set in stone yet. And so I said, well, I help people write business plans. I'd love to teach your attendees. And she said, well, send me a proposal, which I did. Ultimately, as you can guess, she said, hey, well, sure, you want to come? Want to come speak? So I, just by asking questions about how does this work? What's the process? Can I be considered? I was in front of the room in front of I think it was 800, 700 people at
Wow.
the Meadowlands. I don't know what it's called now, outside New York City, for 3 days, positioning myself as the expert in business plan writing. And that was very early in my career. Again, just because I bothered to ask questions about like, how does that work? So I would encourage people. I think you really can get so far just by asking. Yeah,
Wow.
what's and especially if they say no, asking like, well, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Why is that a no? I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask that extra question, right? Because you might end up getting some insight, or you might even find a different angle to go at it next time, right?
Exactly. You get feedback. It's I always encourage people like in the Association of Ghostwriters, if you don't get a project, well, ask why.
Yeah.
What was it? Where did you think I was weak? What did the other person have that I didn't have? One time I discovered that I didn't ask enough questions. Hey, that's great intel. Now I come with like pages and pages of questions. So yeah, just ask.
Yeah. It's funny when you said about how, you can learn new skills later in age. I think because you have you have people that say you can't teach old dogs new tricks. Is that what they say? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now, I think it's because I remember when I first started looking at becoming self-employed, and you end up getting just thrust into this whole area of having to learn all these new things and read all these books. And someone had said something like, most people don't read another book after they graduate high school. And I thought to myself that, that's a good point. Maybe it's not that they can't learn new things. Maybe it's that it takes some time to relearn how to learn. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Or maybe they didn't know how to learn in the first place.
And that's true too. Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of, well, especially now, most schools just push you through, right?
Right.
It's not like it used to be where you actually failed, right? Now you
Right.
can't fail anymore. So it's
Right.
possible you could get all the way through school and not even know how to learn, right?
Yeah. And reading comprehension is, at least to me, a critical skill, not
Hmm.
just reading and, you know, being able to regurgitate information, but really process it and wonder, okay, so what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my business? What can I take away from that? And I think too few people have that skill.
Yeah, I agree, and it's too bad. But
Yeah.
the good news, I think, anyway, is that I was far more interested in the topics that I was learning right when it came to business than I was in the things that were thrust upon me in school. And so I'm guessing that probably everybody's like that. Once you get out, maybe you have this negative opinion of learning because you were learning things you didn't want to learn. But now you can learn anything you want, right? And make it something that you love, right?
Well, and I think even going back to school in college, when you had the choice between taking all those required courses and then you got to take the courses in your major, I think
Yeah,
inevitably for most people, their GPA went way up because,
yeah,
as you said, you're studying stuff that you're interested in, you're curious about it, you're paying attention. Yeah,
yeah.
you're going to do better.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I remember when I was I never had an option between an exam and a paper. It was always a paper and a speech for us. And I always chose the speech. But it was very few, there was very few of us that chose the speech. Most people chose the paper, and I thought that was a lot of work for me, right? The speech was, I thought, easier, but I guess it depends on people, right?
Speech was probably shorter
Yep.
and for you probably easier because I think you've probably always been very comfortable talking to people and getting in
Yeah.
front of the room. But for those of us who are introverts, oh, I would have taken the paper.
You would have taken the paper. Of course you
Take the
would have.
paper. I just slide it into the professors, not having to get up in front of anybody. Yeah, that would have been my choice.
Yeah, most people did. And but yeah, just being able to get in front of people, like it's I don't know. I'd be interested to know which was graded more fairly, I guess, because I think that just getting in front of a class, I think that is just generally known as something that's scary. And so you might even be able to get away with a little bit of extra mistakes because you're the one that got in front of the class and did that. Whereas the paper probably was a little bit more strict, right?
I bet the professor was in a better mood sitting back in the class watching you speak and then giving you a grade rather than having to read like a 10-page paper times however many people were in the class. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. But both of those, I mean, both of those would have been useful because I mean, hey, the people that wrote the paper would have been, in your area, and maybe they might end up being writers, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
So now, not everything goes as planned. Sometimes there's some mistakes that we make along the way, and I'm wondering, can you share with me something that didn't go as planned and how you recovered from that?
Yeah, I don't know that what I'm going to call like a recent failure was necessarily due to lack of planning, but I've had time to think about this. So my ghostwriting business, which I started early 2000s, let's say, I don't know the exact year when I really moved into that, but my revenue has grown steadily into the, multi six figures, and
Wow.
it was just booming through COVID, booming because everybody was home and wanted to write their books, right?
Mhm.
And then end of 2023, things started to slow down. Like I didn't really have projects that were on my books for 2024. And I thought, well, it's just seasonality.
Yeah.
Not going to worry about it. I'm just going to enjoy the holidays. Well, then 2024 comes in and it doesn't pick up. I had a couple of projects, book projects that the authors ended up not wanting to finish for whatever reason. So 2024 was quite the anomaly, but I was really nervous that this was not an anomaly and this was like the
Hmm.
way things now were, my
Yeah.
new normal. And it was a really scary time. I had never had a year like that. And so I think ghostwriters face this regularly. You never know, like, where's my next project coming from? Or freelance writers in general. Am I going to get another project? You start to wonder. And it took several months, but about middle of 2024, I realized, okay, this is not turning around. This is not really my fault, but I got to do something different.
Yeah.
And so, they have this saying, which I kept repeating in my head. Definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I've got to do something different because I haven't done anything different and nothing is changing. So I overhauled my marketing. I started blogging much more consistently to get my website ranked higher in Google. I hired a LinkedIn consultant to help improve my LinkedIn profile and then also do some regular LinkedIn outreach. I was pursuing more podcast opportunities, speaking opportunities. I created a lead magnet about the value of a book and how it can help authors get more opportunities. So I really just started to introduce all these new things that I hadn't been doing. And within a couple months, I had a new project. So that was the end of 2024. And going into 2025, things started to happen. I can't point to any one thing that I necessarily did right, but I think maybe the momentum of just doing
Yeah.
so many things to get my name out there, to explain to people what the heck ghostwriting is, how it works, it started to bear fruit. And so by 2025, even like second quarter of 2025, I was busy and I was booked throughout the year, started off 2026, already multiple six figures booked, like things are back on track. But that was a really scary time. And I think maybe the takeaway for your listeners is if you get to that point where nothing is happening, you just have to try something new.
Yeah.
And I might even encourage you to check out AI for those kinds of discussions of like, here's what I'm doing based on my business. What do you recommend? And sometimes it's really interesting to see what recommendations come through.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I use AI quite a bit for that kind of brainstorming because
Yeah,
it is nice to sometimes you flesh out these ideas by talking to somebody, and now you don't have to take someone's time. Now you can
right.
take the AI's time, right, and just work through it. And sometimes you get some pretty good ideas. Sometimes you get garbage though, just to put that
Yes.
out there. Right.
Agreed. And I've tried different platforms to see what kind of information they're going to recommend because they pull from different
Hmm.
sources. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that like so. every business is different, and some businesses get off to a really great start and then slow down. Sometimes have a really difficult time getting started, and then it takes time to build up. I think actually the first one is a little bit harder because if you're having a hard time getting started, then great. I mean, you're learning all the things you need to do to get that momentum going. But if things go really, really well at first, because maybe you have a really great network or, whatever it is, and then it drops, like that's the situation you're in. That is very difficult because you don't even know. Like, it's like I got to start from like scratch now, and I don't even know
Right.
what that feels like, right?
Right. It's what happened and what do I do about it? And I, at the time, had some inklings of what was going on, but I really just had to figure out, okay, what's the workaround?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because there is something. There is something. And it's good. I mean, I think that the faster you recognize that you got to start to do something a little bit different, the better. Uh, but on the other hand, like it's one of those things where it's always been working. So you sort of have this idea of like, well, maybe it'll just come back, right? And how long
Exactly.
you'll hold on to that, right?
Exactly. And also you need to consider what is enough time?
Yeah.
Because there is the argument to be made that you could pivot too quickly, too
Yeah.
soon. You know,
Absolutely.
you have a couple weeks where business isn't where it used to be, and you think, oh my gosh, I've got to start over and, revamp my website and do all these other things when actually it was like the holidays, and that's just how things are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think so. I think that if probably the most dangerous one would be that you have work on your docket, whatever it is, that you're working through, but no new work is coming in. That's probably the most dangerous, right? Because if you lost everything and you had no clients to work on, well then now it's like, what am I going to do when I get up? I might as well do something, right? So that makes sense. But if you have work to do, but you got no new work coming in, it might be by the time you end that that project, now you're like, okay, now I have to start all over again. Whereas if you had sort of like just carved out whatever it is, 10% of your time or whatever it happens to be, just to the new marketing activities and recognizing that, well, I haven't gotten a new, like, I don't have anybody in the pipe right now. That's a problem, right? Like,
And
so,
yeah, and you have hit on exactly sort of the definition of why feast or famine happens in freelance writing in general. It's
okay.
exactly that you have business that is filling your time and you feel like you have so much work that you don't have time to market, and
Mm,
you'll get to that once you're done with this assignment. And so you keep your head down, you're working, you're doing great things, but then when you lift your head up and you realize, oh, I don't have anything, then you're starting from scratch. And that's when, you get these dips. So you have nothing. So you put 100% of your time in marketing and things start to come in, and then you get fully booked again. And so you stop the marketing. And like, it's not an efficient or effective way to be. You need to always be marketing, to your point.
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's just Ghostwriter. I think that's everybody kind of
Yes.
ends up in that situation, especially when you're a solopreneur or when you're got a very small team because you've only got so many hours in the day.
Yep.
And it's like, if you've got all this work on your plate, you might as well, like, you just think, well, I just got to get that work done.
Yep.
But there is something to be said for just going, no, 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 spread that out a little bit. Make sure you have that small little snippet of stuff that you're doing that continues to bring in more business, right?
Yeah, can I take, okay, is this thing due today by 5, or is it due in 2 days by 5? Well, if it's due in 2 days, you don't actually have to finish it today. Take some of that time and spend it on LinkedIn, commenting on people's posts, or
Hmm.
working on a blog post, or pursuing podcasts. And then, like, finish it tomorrow. You're still ahead of the game, but don't, I think sometimes people make sort of make up deadlines.
Yeah.
And that's not always, it's great to be finished early. Clients will love you. But if you just keep only doing the work and not doing the marketing, it's not going to build a sustainable business.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of hits on another issue with getting done early too, is that now the expectation from the client, because clients will always push for as much as they can get, right?
Yeah.
And if you jump too fast, that's great. I mean, if you got nothing going on, then great, you can jump fast. But what that kind of sets you up for is in a few weeks when you have a bunch of clients you're working on, and now every one of them thinks that you're going to jump on that task as fast as you did the last time. Now you're in trouble, right?
Yep, exactly right. And that actually happened to me. Early on in my career, I developed a reputation among publishers as being a really fast writer.
Mm,
And I am. But exactly as you described, I was given all the emergencies. Here, Marcia will handle it. Send it to Marcia. She can get that done. And while I was thrilled to get all the work, it was after a while, you just get burned out
yeah.
because I never actually pushed back and said, well, do you need it in a week or can we have two? And so over time, I've gotten better at setting boundaries and resetting expectations when they come and say, yeah, I need a book by, like February 1st, April 1st. Like, no, let's be reasonable.
Yeah. Do you know what I've been doing lately? And is making use of the schedule of an email, like that schedule thing that you can do with Google. Because
Yep.
sometimes, like, I mean, I like sometimes I just like get in work mode at nighttime, for example, right? And it's off
Yep.
hours. I should not be working there. I should not be sending emails at that time because then people are going to expect you to be working at 8 o'clock in the evening, right? Or whatever it is.
Hmm.
So what I'll do then is I'll do the work. I'll get everything all ready to go, and then I'll set it to schedule to send it tomorrow or the next day. And then it's off my plate. I'm not thinking about it anymore, but now it gets sent in a time frame that makes more sense for your business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When people would expect to be receiving emails from you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's always ways to do it because I mean, you also don't want to like it's a balance, right? I mean, if you've got like inspiration and you want to be, especially in your area when you want to be writing, well, it's not just like, well, I shouldn't be writing right now, so I'm just not going to write. You can write it and get it done and then just set it to be sent out in a few days, right?
Well, yeah, with writing especially, I think when you get into the flow,
Mm,
you're writing and it's going quickly, you don't really want to stop. So it's best to just go with it. And so I'll do that when I'm working on something that's due like later in the week. I'll try and get a draft done. So I'll sit with it, I'll work with it if I can get some momentum going. Um, it's much faster that way, but yeah, that doesn't mean I immediately send it in. Set it
no.
aside.
Yep, set it aside. So now, what about your jam room? So tell me a little bit more about your home office. Like, how do you be productive at home?
Well, early on, I paid attention to what colleagues were doing. And so many writers apparently like to have soft classical music in the background,
Hmm?
or they'll go to coffee shops and work because they like the hustle and bustle, like the energy, I think it is,
Yeah.
around them that helps them write. And so I tried all of these things thinking that that was like the secret to being productive. Mm-mm, not for me. So I need silence. Silence is golden. So I have a home office that has a door. My desk is not facing the window because if I face the window, I'd be looking at it all day long.
Hmm.
My office has carpeting, it has window, treatments to absorb sound. So when I concentrate, I hear nothing else. And that's key. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
But then I also have tech. So in addition to the basics, I have computer, I have a huge monitor, I have, a ring light, Yeti mouse, I have an ergonomic keyboard, I have an ergonomic chair. Unfortunately, that keeps breaking.
Hmm.
But I just I'm trying to be prepared for whatever situation I may need to contend with, whether it's like a podcast interview, whether it's an interview I need to do and get transcribed, but just try to be prepared.
Hmm. So when we're talking about your equipment, like what's your opinion on like the quality of the equipment that you get? Like, do you think that it's okay to just go with the bare minimum, or do you think you should splurge a little bit for that?
I think if it is something that you're going to be using on a daily basis to help you produce whatever it is you got to go high end, or at least I think it's worth the money. I go through keyboards like you wouldn't believe because I'm typing all day long. And so the letters get
Wear them off. That's
disintegrated.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I invested in an ergonomic one probably 5 keyboards ago because I was starting to get what I think was carpal tunnel So now I pay the big bucks for this pricey keyboard that allows me to continue to work. So it means that I am more productive because my wrists don't get tired, my hands don't get
Yeah.
tired. Um, yeah, so I think if you're using it regularly, go all in. If you're testing something out, you're not really sure if you need this, then maybe you can try the off-brand version, but I think it's risky.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I imagine there's probably some things that the minimum would be okay, but I mean, usually the higher end versions of it are like they're more convenient. They're made
Yeah,
that way to be more of a better experience when you're using it. And so, if this is your business, like right? I mean, and I think
right.
about it from the perspective of like a company, like a big company. Oftentimes when they buy their stuff, it's not all bargain basement stuff. They buy the equipment that's going to make their workforce most productive. And so if you're looking for ways to cut costs, maybe that's not the place to cut it. I mean, maybe not the top of the line, but definitely somewhere near the middle, the top end of it, right?
I I think this is especially relevant with printers.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know what kind of printer you have, but there are printers that are it's like the razor and the razor blades. So you can get a printer for 25 bucks on Black Friday.
Yes, you can.
And then you're going to pay tons of money for those toner cartridges that last about a week.
Hmm.
I discovered this when I was in my doctoral program and I had to be printing out case studies every week. Oh my gosh, I went through a toner every 5 days. It was crazy. So then I upgraded the printer to one that had more capacity for toner cartridge, paid probably 500 bucks for the printer, but now my toner cartridge lasts more than 5 days.
Wow. Wow. I barely print anything anymore. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, for that right there, I mean, it's one of those things where you do, I mean, I do remember like some like print cartridges are more expensive than the printer in the first place. Like,
Yes. Yes. However, I think the more you spend on the actual equipment, the more that can help keep your printer expenditures down.
agreed. Now, what about the band? So tell me about the team that you have working around you.
Well, when I came out of Kodak, I thought I needed to build this empire,
Hmm.
surround myself with people because that's the environment I came out of where everybody
Hmm.
had their team. And I tried it. I hired a couple employees, had a couple part-timers, and I realized that what I actually needed was people who were already experts in their fields. The employees that I hired, they were great, and I probably was a terrible manager, but they couldn't work at the speed or provide the same level of output as I could. And so
Yeah.
I let them go. And for the last 25 years, probably, I've relied on outside experts. So I've had a virtual assistant for at least 25 years, like before it was even popular, because I wanted to be able to hand off things that I didn't want to learn how to do.
Hmm.
Like Tim, I don't really need to know about the back end of a website. She handles that. When I need updates here and there, I send off an email. I don't need to do that. And it's not the best use of my time. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I think about um, my band members is what else can I hand off to them? And what do I need to retain? Well, I need to retain all the writing because that's why people are hiring me. But my virtual
Yes.
assistant handles the tech stuff. I have a computer consultant who deals with any viruses or issues with my actual computer. I bring it over to her. She's local. I have a graphic designer who also happens to be local, but I do use other online platforms if I need something. I have an online researcher who's not local. I have, accountant, attorney, other people, transcription. I have my transcription service. They're based in Ukraine.
Hmm.
So I just try and identify what are the key aspects of my business or my process that I don't personally need to do. And I think I've at this point pretty much delegated everything besides the writing.
Now, did you start by doing it all and then you started to delegate, or did you like
Yeah.
build that right at the beginning? Okay, you did. Yeah.
I was doing it all myself because, when you're in startup mode, at least I wanted to build a sustainable business. I didn't want to spend all my money the first
Yeah.
month and then be wondering how I was going to pay for mortgage and stuff. So I built it slowly. As business would come in, I would try and identify, okay, who's better at this than me? And I
Yeah.
quickly learned that a virtual assistant is worth their weight in gold because they know how to do things that I don't know how to do, and they can do the tasks faster than I could ever do them. So it's actually more profitable for me to hand off things to them because they'll do it in 10 minutes when it would have taken me 4 hours.
Right on. Okay. And also another thing that is that since you had a hand in everything, you knew what to look for as well, right? You knew
Yeah.
whether the person was actually good at what they do or not, right?
Good point. Good point. Because early on, if you don't really know how to do anything, it's hard to judge. Like, is this person, could they do it better than me?
Hmm.
And sometimes you're not really sure and you have to take a chance. But I think the good news about hiring contractors and consultants and people like that is that you don't have an ongoing relationship. If they turn out to be duds, they can't actually do the work that you need them to do in the time frame that you need it, you can cut ties and find somebody else. And it's much easier than if you have hired someone full time. It's a process.
Hmm. So now I'm actually just curious, and maybe, um, but were there any parts of your business that you felt you were really good at, but you still delegated it, and why?
I thought for a long time that I was really good at research.
Okay.
And I still think I am pretty good at research. When I went back to get my doctorate, that was the primary reason. I wanted to get better at research. I wanted to, yeah, be faster, find better information. And I did that, but I discovered that when I got really busy and needed to hone in on the writing itself, I needed to hand off the research because it just like I wouldn't get any sleep if I was trying to do everything myself. And so I found someone who was who had access to the same resources that I did, scholarly kind of resources, and she worked fast. So,
Right.
yeah, so then,
Right.
and then once you have somebody else who does that thing, unless you love doing that part of the process, I mean, I think that's a reason to hold on to it too. If you love something and it just brings you joy, well, then you don't have to delegate it unless it's impeding your progress and growing your business, then you should consider it.
Yeah. Yeah. And in this case, it was something that you didn't necessarily love, but you were still good at it.
Yeah, I thought it was good at it. I probably overestimated my speed. And yeah, I think I was probably above average. But then again, when you go to somebody whose business it is to do online research, they're going to
Yeah.
be better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also like to what you said earlier, people are hiring you to do the writing.
Right.
They're not necessarily hiring you to do the research. So
Nope.
that could be the reason why you'd go, okay, well, between these two things, which one am I going to offload? Right?
Right.
Because
Right.
you don't need to be doing the research, but I mean, what would be the point of hiring you if you weren't doing the writing? Right?
Exactly. But handing those pieces off gives you more capacity to either get the client work done faster, take on more client work. It's makes you potentially more profitable.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, there a learning curve? Like is there like a step back before you take a step forward when you hire somebody?
That's a good question. Uh, I think, yeah, you do have to spend a fair amount of time evaluating your options. And even if you go to Fiverr, Upwork, you're going to have lots of candidates, and you do need to invest some time figuring out who's going to be the best one. And you may make a misstep. You may choose someone
Mhm.
who's great on paper, but who doesn't actually have the ability to do what you need them to do. So you can, I don't want to say waste time, but you can spend time that doesn't end up to be all that useful or productive, but that's
Yeah.
necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just a matter of the scaling aspect of it, right? Because
Yeah,
I think that there's a lot of people that are good at a lot of different things. And I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably are. You probably are pretty good at a lot of things. So you could do it all.
yep,
But when it comes down to it, you've only got so many hours in the day, and we all know that when those hours are gone, you can't tuck
right,
on any more work.
right.
So a decision has to be made at some point if you want to scale that business that you're going to have to let go of some of that work, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So now let's talk a little bit about the tools that are available to us now. And there's a lot of them, right? What tools do you use that are getting you the most success in your business?
Well, there are, I think, business tools and then there are writing tools. So, some of the business tools that I'm using, Zoom, it's my preferred
Hmm.
video platform. There are a bunch of other ones, but I just find it the easiest to use. Um, I use Bench for my online bookkeeping.
Oh,
So it's automatically connected to my accounts. So they just download all the reports and then crank out the numbers for my account at the end of the year. I don't have to spend any time on it. It's
good.
great. Um, those are, yeah, some of the businessy ones. But then for the writing, we've got, well, of course, the Microsoft Office suite.
Yeah.
PowerPoint I use to some degree, Excel and Word the most. I use SpeechPad for, I think I mentioned, for transcription. So I'll do a Zoom call, I'll record it, I'll download the audio file, and then I upload it to SpeechPad. They have humans that will transcribe it. I love it because, kind of back to your question about efficiency, it's kind of what we were talking about. SpeechPad provides results that I don't have to go in and tweak. It's formatted nicely, very accurate. So I don't have to spend time going back through and trying to figure out what was that word? That doesn't sound right, which happens a lot with some of the free services. Um, I also use Grammarly kind of in the background because I have a tendency to miss commas. Shocking. So it will tell me, no, Marcia, you need a comma there, you need a comma there. Um, yeah, those are the basic ones. Just and I've taken time to figure out. I've tried other ones. Some writers use a tool called Scrivener to help them with organizing material. I I find that I like Word. I like starting with a blank page and then just figuring out what makes sense for me rather than being given a structure. Um, Other people use team software like Asana or
Yeah.
Basecamp or things like that. I'm not generally working with a team. It's mainly just my piece, so I don't use those. Um, yeah, those are the basics.
So many tools. How do you decide which one to choose? Like, because there's so many options in every one of those categories.
It's well, some of that, like the transcription, is trial and error. I
Hmm.
tried them. Oh, you got to try Otter. Okay, so I tried Otter, and
Yeah.
the formatting was it was
Wonky.
difficult for me to follow.
Hmm.
The results probably were very accurate, but the formatting made it hard for me to find the quotes that I wanted. So then I tried Rev, and it was not as accurate as I needed. So then somebody suggested SpeechPad, which is humans, behind the scene. And once I had it, having seen the results that were not optimal, I stuck with it. And if something else comes along that's even better, I might try it. But, I'm very happy with the results so far. So
Well,
yeah, it's trial, see if it works. Oh, I tried a CRM system, Pipedrive,
yeah.
uh, because I wanted to do a better job of managing the leads that I get. I get a lot of leads and I want to stay in touch with them. And, back to our discussion about marketing, sometimes when I'm too in the weeds with the work, I don't do a great job of following up. And so I bought Pipedrive, but it is so complex that I ended up canceling it because I just wasn't using it.
Mm. Yeah, I find that happens a lot with a lot of the tools is that the tools are trying to be too much and they get
Yeah.
too much work to figure out what they're doing. Like a lot of these tools are like these all-in-one tools, and you're like, holy smokes, like you're doing more than what I need. And you know what? That probably sounds a whole lot like the same thing we talked about in the band, right? When you're
Mm.
hiring a person, you want to
Yep.
hire the best at what they do. You want them to be
Yep.
specialized because they're probably not going to be awesome at everything, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
they're going to have their thing, and same thing with the tools, right?
Yeah, but you don't need somebody who's able to do everything. That's
Mm,
again why I went to just hiring the experts. I need you to do this one thing better than anybody else.
yeah,
And I'll pay you for the half an hour that you have to spend on my task. Happy to pay more because still it's going to give me a better result. But yeah,
agree.
it is trial and error a lot of the time.
Agree. So let's move to your guest solo. So tell me what is exciting in your business right now.
Well, I think there are two sides, and we got to talk about AI.
Yep. Yep.
So, because that's a big thing in the writing and publishing industry right now. I'm on one hand excited because I'm finding it really helpful for back to the research piece. When I need to verify a quote, for example, or find a date for something, I'm using AI tools to verify information. I'm not using it for writing. I won't. That's, again, not why people hire me. But I think it has the potential to make us more efficient and help us get done all those ancillary activities much faster. So I'm
Agreed.
excited for that because I'm all about efficiency. The one thing that scares me about AI is that I think some aspiring authors um, expect too much or are thinking that AI is going to be the solution to writing their book this year.
Hmm.
And it worries me because there are some really big limitations that I think people need to be aware of with respect to AI and book writing. And the biggest is if you use AI to generate your manuscript based on whatever prompt you want to give it, it cannot receive copyright protection. So you've created this thing, and essentially it's going to be in the public domain. Publishers also won't publish it if you admit that you used AI because they don't want it. More publishers are including clauses that require the author to state that they did not use AI. The other problem is plagiarism that you're not aware of. If you put in a prompt to AI and say, tell me about this, and it regurgitates information, you don't know where it has pulled that information, and it could be directly from a book that somebody else wrote.
Yep.
So you can be hit with a plagiarism claim, even though you didn't know that you were plagiarizing. It's just all part of the problems with the system. So I'm excited, but I really hope that people are aware of some of the downsides. Again, especially with respect to publishing, there's some really big issues. And I think AI and people experimenting with it was why 2024 was so quiet for me because
Yeah.
people were so excited, about the possibility. "Oh, hey, I won't have to pay a writer or a ghostwriter. I'm just going to use AI." And then they suddenly started to see, oh, there are big downsides. So, so now things are picking back up again. Um, but yeah, just I hope people will investigate some of the issues.
Yeah, I agree. I think yeah, I think you're right. I think that there's a lot of well, I mean, there's a lot of lazy people out there that think that AI is just going to do it for them, and
Yes.
it's not. Now, one of the ways that I've been using AI to generate content for, because I build websites, is one of the things that I do, is I will actually either get the client or myself, I'll just dictate all the content and get it to reformat it for me. And it's really brilliant at doing stuff like that because it's taking me and
Right.
just fixing it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
and that seems to be working really well, but I have not had any success with just saying write this for me. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't think it ever will, right?
Right. I what I'm seeing people doing is they're creating their own GPTs, which is kind of like
Yep.
a tool,
Yep.
and they're uploading all of their content into it so that it now has like a library of me,
Yep.
and then based on that, asking for new content. And I could see how that could be interesting. It may not be perfect, but if it's drawing from you, then it's going to sound like you based on your background, but you still have plagiarism. You could self-plagiarize, and that's a problem too.
Yeah, yeah, you could plagiarize even, yeah. But I mean, I do think that that's where the power is going to be is by
Yes.
teaching it who you are.
Yes.
Because I mean, technically, I mean, wouldn't it be, I mean, if AI just takes you and rewrites something that you just wrote, well, that's kind of what you're going to do too. Like, so, I mean, I think some people are like, some people are too scared of it, and some people
Yeah.
aren't using it enough. It's
Yeah.
somewhere going to be in the middle, I think, where it is a super powerful tool. And for things like research, as long as you make sure you ask all the fact-checking questions that you need to
Yep.
be asking, because
Yep.
it'll go find stuff that's not real, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it is like having a whole research department in one prompt that'll go out there and find a bunch of stuff for you. As long as you, like you say, you make sure that you fact check it properly. But
Yep.
but I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the next few years are going to be with AI. I think it is going to tighten up quite a bit because I mean it has come a long way in the last 2 years. So imagine where it's going to be in the next five, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's leaps and bounds ahead of where it was in, I think 2023 is probably the year I would guess that it went mainstream
Hmm.
and that people really started to experiment. But yeah, it will be interesting.
We will see. So how do people find out more about you then?
If they want to learn a little bit more about me, they're welcome to check out my website, which is my name, marcialaytonturner.com.
Hmm.
And if they are interested in exploring whether a ghostwriter could help them with their writing, if they go to the Association of Ghostwriters.org, we have a Find a Ghostwriter. It's one of the tabs, and you can search our directory of members or you can fill out a form, and I'm happy to try and connect you with somebody who is legit and qualified.
That's awesome. So what does the process look like? Are they sending what they already have, or like is this start from scratch? Like what do they do?
Sure. So the form is really just some of the basics. And when I take that information and share it with our members, I take out identifying information. So it's still sort of anonymized, but it's basics like what is it that you're working on? Is it a book? Is it an article series? Is it blog posts? What do you need? What
Oh,
is it about? What do you already have? If it's a book, like do you have an outline? Do you have notes? Are other people going to need to be interviewed? Just trying to get a sense of the scope. What's your timeline? When do you need this by? Or is it just whenever? What's your budget? And we have some different tiers that you can choose from, along with an explanation of the level of experience you can expect
mm.
at each of those. And then they fill that out. Shouldn't take very long. It comes to me. As I said, I then check out identifying information and send it to our experienced members and say who might be up for this, who's interested, who has the background, and then I forward it on and the client takes it from there.
I love that. That's awesome. And especially like because you do blog posts, that's great. Because I mean, I know that when you're doing SEO, writing content is a big deal. And
Yeah.
sometimes, I mean, it can take some time, right? Even if you're using AI. So having some help
Yeah.
with that is huge.
And I think especially for authors, I think they don't realize sometimes that a book is a great product to have, but even before you publish the book, you should be doing some of these other things like
Hmm.
blogging,
Hmm.
writing articles, things like that to establish yourself as the expert in your field if you're writing a nonfiction book, of course. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk about music. Who's your favorite rock star?
Ooh, oh, I'm not as much of a rock person.
Musician,
I'm
any
more
music.
pop. But back in the day, yeah, in high school, I'm trying to think of some of the bands that we would listen to. Led Zeppelin,
Ooh.
AC/DC. Um,
So then
yeah.
what pop do you like then? Tell me what your favorite pop star is.
It varies by the week. I have Sirius radio, and so I turn it on. I have it on Hits One, and I'll just listen to. I like things that are like bop. Like there's one I don't know who the artist is, but So Unfair. I sing
Hmm.
along to that song. I love that song.
Nice. Right on. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for rocking out with me today. This has been awesome.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. And to the listeners, make sure you go to workathomerockstar.com for more information, and we'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.